Hi, I'm Callahan. I am a science and math teacher at Odyssey Community School, and it's a great school, unique in that it teaches this design thinking model, so I'm really excited to get a chance to talk about that. I just want to thank the organizers for putting this on, and I want to thank my students because they're amazing. And tonight I'm going to talk about what I have learned about design thinking, and I've learned about that through two formats, one through teaching at Odyssey and another through teaching as a wilderness instructor at Voyager Outward Bound School. So one thing I've learned about design thinking is that I use it all the time. I design lessons, projects, themes, units. And another thing I've learned is that it's really valuable to teach it in a very thoughtful way to my students. They can use this model to create very well-crafted and creative work. And my first introduction to design thinking is how a lot of people first experience it, whether you know it or not, through the scientific model. And the scientific model is where you define a problem, you create a hypothesis, design an experiment, test that hypothesis, and then evaluate your results. And regardless of what your results tell you, all scientists ask, what's next? And in that sense, the design process is really a cyclical model. It continues. Problems are constantly evolving, and so must solutions. And this is a really valuable thing to teach students, because then they start to take on their own learning and see that it's a really nonstop cyclical model. And in teaching design thinking, I've found that there's a couple things that students really struggle with and that I can support them as a teacher. And one is asking that good question or finding that good hypothesis. It's often an essential and overlooked part of the design process is finding a good problem to try and solve. And once they've found that good problem to solve, they often struggle with gathering useful information about that problem, gathering that foundational information. And as a teacher, I can support them by teaching great research skills and by also having great discussions of their ideas as a group. And one great forum for teaching the design thinking model is through physics projects. And a project that I've done with my students this past semester is on Newton's laws. They had to design the choice of three projects: a marshmallow catapult, a marble roller coaster, or a classic egg drop experiment. And each one had a design restriction. The marshmallow catapult, it had to launch that marshmallow 5 meters. And it seemed like an easy problem, but the solution was harder to come by. So they had to practice prototyping, and they had to build and improve upon their designs. They sketched their ideas, they calculated physics concepts, and they wrote or filmed a troubleshooting journal entry for each prototype. When it failed, they had to reflect on what worked and ditch what didn't and make their next prototype. And many students had a successful final project after many failed attempts. And this frustration came from that cycle of failure, and they didn't really like going back to the drawing board, especially when it seemed like an easy goal, like making a marble go 2 loops on a roller coaster. But I found that that feeling of success that they had upon completion of their project was much greater because they really felt that they had overcome a significant challenge. And I actually weighted their grade so that they got the majority of their points for that troubleshooting journal. They were rewarded for their tenacity and for learning from their mistakes. And in a lot of ways, design thinking is a very practical model for creating products, ideas, and making discoveries. But in the context of teaching, it serves another purpose. And that's when I want to shift gears and talk about wilderness instructing at Outward Bound. I've taught canoeing, sea kayaking, whitewater canoeing, dog sledding. And at Outward Bound, the design process means confronting challenges with tenacity and initiative. No student starts an Outward Bound course as an expert paddler or dog handler, and no instructor starts as an expert facilitator. Students leave our base camp often paddling in circles, but they return as confident paddlers. And that comes from a cycle of creating goals and getting feedback on their goals and working on them throughout the day. And groups collaborate to problem solve. And it's that process of failure and then striving for success that creates confidence and empowerment. At Outward Bound, I can teach this in a confined wilderness setting where quitting really isn't an option, and students begin to feel that rhythm. And it's that perseverance in the face of failure and challenge that I want to bring to my students in middle school. Odyssey students have a lot of opportunities to practice design thinking. One thing is they do a semester-long independent research project of a topic of their choosing. And another thing that the middle school does in particular is what's called mini-mester. The first 2 weeks of their spring semester, they have no academic classes, and they do a collaborative group project. This year, we made a music video, and they wanted to do claymation, and they also wanted to do stop motion using a green screen. Really cool experience. Teachers really only acted as guidance in this process. We had no say in their artistic direction of the project. They had to learn really complex skills like creating clay animation. So they had to research the process, they had to make prototypes, they had to test and retest and refine their ideas over and over again. And they could become experts on certain parts of this project. And this collaborative and participatory nature of the project really allowed students who are more reserved to come out of their shells and become quasi-masters in something that they were interested in, like filmmaking or animation. And that is extremely empowering for students. And a really exciting part for me to see was them to work as a team. And that's a huge part of the design process is teamwork. They met roadblocks and found solutions to really challenging problems. And they overcame it together without teacher interference. And they had to learn how to edit and overlay scenes together to make 3 layers of craftfully edited work, which is amazing. And my day-to-day goal as a teacher is not necessarily to create designers or artists or filmmakers. I want to inspire them that the most interesting part of their day and part of their work can also be the most frustrating part, the return to the drawing board. And I want them to see that failure is not a bad thing. It's definitely an opportunity to learn. And it's also another stepping stone in their journey. And once that they see that this is possible, they see the true potential that they hold within themselves. And once they find that potential, they won't settle for anything less. Thank you.